Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm here with my review of Masters of the Universe, the 2026 reboot, reimagining, whatever you want to call it, the new movie based on the toy property and animated series from the 1980s. Of course, this is the second live-action Masters movie, but the first one was 39 years ago. They've been trying to make a new Masters of the Universe movie for almost 20 years. If you look at the Wikipedia page, there is a long list of different studios and filmmakers who tried to make this happen. It's finally here, and I think it is a freaking entertaining movie. This is a really fun interpretation of Masters of the Universe. Nicholas Galitzine plays He-Man here, or Prince Adam as he's often referred to, who in this version of the story was sent to Earth as a child to protect him when the evil Skeletor and his forces attacked Eternia. And so he has been living on Earth for the past 15 years, trying to make his way back home to Eternia, trying to get back to his people. And he is going to get back there, but they are still under the domination of Skeletor, and now it's going to be his hero's journey about finding the He-Man within and to help his people rebel against Skeletor. I think this version of Masters of the Universe makes a lot of savvy choices, and I really like how they treat Adam and this whole thing of him on Earth, which I know when the first pictures even came out and there was just the idea that he's going to be on Earth at all, people were like, oh God, why does it have to be on Earth at all? They got flashbacks in the 1987 movie, which was mostly set on Earth. And I understand the idea of, hey, can't we just have this fantasy world? Why do we have to have any sort of into it? But I think what they do here is a nice way to sort of have their cake and eat it too. Because this isn't a story where Adam doesn't know who he is or has amnesia or has to be reminded about Eternia. He fully remembers that's where he's from, but he's been gone long enough and he was just a kid when he left that it can still sort of function as a fish out of water story because he's coming back to a world that is very different, very changed. And also, some people won't remember him, or if they do remember him, he is not going to be the little kid they remembered. And he has also just not been amongst this sort of war-torn society that they have now become. So, it's not having to do the, what is all this? This is crazy. But at the same time, he does get to be kind of drawn into a realm that he is still not quite prepared for as much as he was desperate to get back to it. I do think the movie probably goes a little too long with the idea of him, bumbling about, we're waiting for him to become He-Man, or waiting for him to literally, get bigger and buffer and, start fighting. And maybe it has 10, 15 minutes more before we get to that. But I think that it is a really fun journey the whole way. It's very comedic, but in a way that I don't think sort of loses sight of the center of the story. I think it is a welcome comedy that this film brings. The director is Travis Knight. He's the CEO of Laika, and he directed Kubo and the Two Strings. And his previous live-action movie, Bumblebee, was, of course, another 80s toy property brought to life that I think he did an excellent job with and was very much the movie that the Transformers movie franchise was long in need of after one terrible Michael Bay sequel after another. Also, that opening sequence of Bumblebee, which was set on Cybertron, where we finally got to see these characters look like we remember and like they should look compared to the sort of nebulous blobs they often could seem to be in the Michael Bay films. That very much also is the case here with Masters of the Universe, as far as these are the toys brought to life. And there is something really wonderful about these insane characters from that toy line and seeing them just depicted the way they are, going for it the way they are. They don't hold back. They don't try to sort of diminish the fantastical, weird elements of them. And a character like Trapjaw, with just what he looks like and just seeing it on screen, and he looks freaky, but fun, but strange and weird. It's just really cool to see these characters in this way. I think a big question with this movie, of course, is what is the appeal to people who don't know Masters of the Universe? Because the easy sell is, frankly, for guys like me, Gen X people who grew up with Masters of the Universe and remember the cartoon fondly and remember all these characters. And can this movie appeal to people who are not that generation and don't have that background? I think so. I can't put myself in their shoes fully, but I think that this is a very engaging, brightly colored, goofy in the right way, enticing, fantastical realm that Travis Knight brings to life here. I was seated, with kids in the audience at my press screening, and I thought that some of them were really into it. You could tell. A couple of them were a little freaked out by Skeletor. I'll get back to Skeletor in a moment, but I think it's good for little kids to have a little bit of scariness in their movies if it's not too much for them where they absolutely freak out and need to leave. So I hope that this can, find an audience with the new generation. At the same time, I know it has an uphill battle, but also it's not my money. So I can just say that they made a really entertaining movie, whatever happens with its box office success or lack thereof, as we're going to find out pretty soon. I think the cast is really, really strong here. Nicholas Galitzine has been in a bunch of things the past few years, but I really only know him from Bottoms. But that's one of my favorite comedies of pretty much the past decade. And I think his natural charm, his natural wit serves him very well here because, again, there's a very comedic side to all of this that he needs to play. And I think he is really engaging and really draws you in. And, you want to ground He-Man, which can be a tall order, but I think he does that. You do connect to this character and you want to see him sort of, become something better than he is, and are rooting for him. And I think that he, having all that charm really, really helps. I really like Camila Mendes here as Tila, who is very much sort of his partner throughout the movie. And they have a good bantering back and forth between them. And Idris Elba, of course, is just always, a pro and, believably tough. Man at arms in this movie is sort of seeing tough times. He is trying to get beyond defeat in the past. It's really stuck with him. We meet him and he's down on his luck for quite a while. But Elba, gives him a lot of nice gravitas. The thing about this movie is it is very comedic and it is very self-aware, but it's not lacking in sincerity as well. And there is a message to this movie, and there's a message about, different ways to try to conflict resolution, which is actually a joke within the movie because Adam's job was in HR before he goes back to Eternia. But there is something actually to that in this movie and how Adam slash He-Man has to kind of learn a lesson or learn how he can maybe use what he knew on Earth on Eternia and when it will work and when it won't work. And when the movie has its sincere moments, I buy into that it doesn't feel like, oh, well, they're just saying this to say this. I mean, there is something legitimately sweet and sometimes, nicely emotional about these moments in the midst of what is overall a really fun adventure. Like I said, this is a crazy, crazy world. The He-Man Master of the Universe world with insane characters. And I understand, as a huge comic book fan my whole life, I do roll my eyes sometimes at how many comic book movies do the thing of where they have to make a little self-aware joke about the crazy names of the superheroes and have them be like, you call yourself that? Master of the Universe absolutely does that. It does the joke of like calling out these wacky names. But I also think it earns it because, guys, I mean, Fisto, Ram Man, these are some of the more extreme names ever as far as a children family property, and how on the nose these names were and how unintentionally funny they are now, especially as an adult. And so I think if any movie is going to do the joke about names, this is the one. And I do welcome them because I think this movie is legitimately funny. Now, there's a lot of jokes. They don't all land. There's a couple of groaners here and there and some that just sort of whiff, but I think plenty of them work. There was a lot of times where, I think the movie was earning a lot of big laughs, and it's just also gently sort of sweet and charming throughout the entire story. On the action front, there were some times where I wish the action was a little more amped up as far as the choreography, and I thought, oh, they could have done even more wild things given these characters, but there's a couple of big set pieces. There's one where He-Man is kind of really fighting Skeletor's minions, and he gets to really unleash, and I think that one has some great standout moments. Let's talk about Skeletor and the Jared Leto in the room. Look, I was not psyched to have Jared Leto in this movie. His entire off-screen personas have become really off-putting, all the stories about him on set and how he acts and just everything he projects. There is a reason that people kind of chuckle at his presence in trailers and not in a good way. But I'm going to say he's pretty damn good in this movie. Dare I say it, might be his best performance since he won the Academy Award. Look, he's always been a decent actor, and he's given some really good performances. I just think his off-screen persona has kind of swallowed that up, where it's really hard to even think about that. Now, first of all, yes, it helps that we never see his face, and we're not hearing his actual normal speaking voice in this movie. It's very easy to disconnect that it even is Jared Leto, but he's giving a good performance as Skeletor. He is going for it. He's actually going for it in a way that really you can think about the Haunted Mansion movie a few years ago, which was just not a good movie anyway, but he gave a very lackluster whatever performance in another similar role where you couldn't even tell it was him. But this time he is leaning into everything that makes Skeletor a memorable character, and they have a lot of fun with the idea of him as the cackling animated villain, literally, that he has always been. And I actually think Jared Leto is really strong here. He has got a really good scene partner in Alison Brie, his evil Lynn, who is camping it up in just the right way that she should. And yeah, the movie just is very aware of who these characters are in pop culture and what people might think of them. And the fact that in some ways, Master of the Universe these days for a lot of younger people, memes are going to be the way they even think about some of these characters. And I don't think this movie gets like cringy about that, but they do have some moments that kind of lean into that. There are some scenes near the end where some of the references I did think, is this too on the nose as far as the fact that these are direct references to things from the cartoon from the 80s that, might just be for me and, people of my ilk, because I don't know how much they'll land. But the movie, I don't think it doesn't go too far with that. There's just a couple parts near the end. But I do want to really commend the third act of this movie and the final fight of this movie. It goes in some really interesting places. It takes some big swings. It gets trippy and, visually clever and interesting in ways that are not the expected path. So yeah, I just had a really good time with this movie, and I know that there is a lot of reasons to be skeptical of, Master of the Universe. I know there's a lot of reasons to wonder, will this land with an audience? And, and it could be a huge bomb, but I think that people who do go to see it are going to have a good time by and large, especially if you have the background with the characters, of course, because this is a very loving tribute to Master of the Universe. But even if you don't, I think there is something very, resonant about it all. It taps into something, because Master of the Universe, look, when you look at the creation of it, it was pretty blatantly, let's do our own Star Wars, but let's basically mash together Star Wars with Conan the Barbarian and put, this fantasy realm, sword and sorcery, but also a sci-fi tinge to it. And so you watch this on screen and you think, yeah, this is really cool. It's cool in a way the 1987 movie couldn't achieve, because it really embraces all the trappings of it. And yes, in a summer that has given us an actual Star Wars movie, a Star Wars movie that I did enjoy while also feeling was very much sort of a strangely, nothing story in what the Mandalorian and Grogu was doing, because it was sort of very low stakes. This is the better Star Wars movie this summer. Master of the Universe, which has a lot of trappings of Star Wars, always did. It is intrinsic to the property, delivers some of that Star Wars high that I think a lot of us love in some of these action sequences, and just sort of embracing this other realm and these characters in this situation, what's happening with them all. Also have to really call out how great the score is. Daniel Pemberton has been delivering a lot of wonderful scores in the past few years, of course, the Spider-Verse movies, but he leans into the sort of 80s of it all. And there's a bunch of electric guitar on this. There are power chords all over this score. Brian May from Queen played guitar on this score, and it's very fitting, and it's just sort of leaning into the sword and sorcery throwback aesthetics of it all. It actually reminded me a lot of Deathstalker from last year, which was a very low budget remake of a very low budget movie from the 80s that was kind of part of the same realm, also in the 80s. Which had a similar vibe and also embraced the power chords of it all. Now, that movie cost a fraction of Master of the Universe, so the stakes weren't as high for the shareholders. But again, I didn't pay for this movie. You didn't pay for this movie. So none of that really matters. And yeah, there's some teases in the mid-credit scenes for things for the future we might not ever get a sequel for, but maybe we will. who's to say what's going to happen? But right now, I think you can just enjoy this movie on its own terms. So, Master of the Universe is in theaters this weekend. And if you can like and subscribe tonight, that'd be awesome. All right. Take care, guys. Thanks.